All right. Hare Krishna. Nice to be here with friends. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
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 Right. Today we're reading from Bhagavad Gita, chapter 2, text 9. We'll read the Sanskrit responsively. Sanjaya Uvaka
Sanjaya Vacha.
Evam Ukva Rikisham
Evam Ukva Rishikesham.
Gurakisha Parantapa
Udakesha Parantapa.
Na Yotsya Iti Govindam
Nayocha iti govindam.
Uktva Tushnim Babuvaha
Uktva tushnim babuvaha.
Sanjaya Upacha
Sanjaya uvacha.
Avam Uktva Rishikisham
Ayam uktva rishikesham.
Gurakisha Parantapa
Udakesha parantapa.
Na Yotsya Iti Govindam
Nayocha iti govindam.
Uktva Tushnim Babuvaha
Uktva tushnim babuvaha.
Sanjaya Uvacha
Sanjaya uvacha.
Eva Ukva Rishikesham
Evam uktva rishikesham.
Gura Kesha Parantapa
Udakesha parantapa.
Nayotsya Iti Govindam
Nayocha iti govindam.
Uktva Tushni Bhavaha
Uktva tushnim babuvaha. Sanjaya uvacha.
Sanjaya Uvacha
Evam uktva rishikesham.
Evam Ukva Rishikesham
Udakesha parantapa.
Gurakesha Parantapa
Nayocha iti govindam.
Nayotsya Iti Govindam
Uktva tushnim babuvaha.
Uktva Tushni Babuvaha
Sanjaya Uvacha.
Sanjaya Uvacha
Evam Uktva Rishikesham.
Eva Uktva Rishikesham
Gudakesha Parantapa.
Dakrisha Parantapa
Nayotsya iti govindam.
Nayotsya Iti Govindam
Uktva tushnim babuvaha.
Uktva Tushnim Babuvaha
Sanjaya Uvacha.
Sanjaya Uvacha
Evam Uktva Rishikesham.
Evam Ukva Rishikesham
Gudakesha Parantapa.
Gudakesha Parantapa
Nayocha iti govindam.
Nayotsya Iti Govindam
Vatusnim Bahuvaha.
Uktva Tushnim Babuvaha. Would anyone online like to recite? Hare Krishna. You can read the transliteration. Sanjaya Uvaka, Sanjaya said,
Sanjaya uvacha. Sanjaya said.
Evam, thus,
Evam thus.
Uktva, speaking,
Uttva speaking.
Rikisham unto Krishna. Rishikesham unto Krishna, the master of the senses.
The master of this.
Gudakesha, Arjuna, the master at curbing ignorance.
Kesha, Arjuna, the master at curbing ignorance.
Parantapa, the chastiser of enemies.
Parantapa, the chastiser of enemies.
Nayosha, I shall not fight.
Not fight.
Not fight.
Iti,
Iti.
thus,
Thus,
Govindam,
Govindam,
unto Krishna,
unto Krishna,
the giver of pleasure.
the giver of pleasure.
Uktva,
Uttva,
saying,
saying,
Tushnim,
Tushnim,
silent.
Silent.
Babuva,
Babuva,
became.
Became.
Ha,
Ah,
certainly.
certainly.
Translation. Sanjaya said, having spoken thus, Arjuna, chastiser of enemies, told Krishna, Govinda, I shall not fight, and fell silent. Purport. A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada.
Jai.
Jai. Dhritarashtra must have been very glad to understand that Arjuna was not going to fight and was instead leaving the battlefield for the begging profession. But Sanjaya disappointed him again in relating that Arjuna was competent to kill his enemies. Parantapa. Although Arjuna was for the time being overwhelmed with false grief due to family affection, he surrendered unto Krishna, the supreme spiritual master, as a disciple. This indicated that he would soon be free from the false lamentation resulting from family affection and would be enlightened with perfect knowledge of self-realization or Krishna consciousness, and would then surely fight. Thus, Dhritarashtra's joy would be frustrated, since Arjuna would be enlightened by Krishna and would fight to the end. So some like context is Arjuna in this moment, very powerfully declaring to Krishna that he's not going to fight. So Arjuna standing on the battlefield is quickly becoming aware, like really present to, that his duty is to murder family. Like some of the greatest warriors on the other side, some of the greatest forces on the other side of the battlefield are his family, mentors, teachers, elders. And Arjuna is like, he's so moral and pious that he's present. Like, how could I ever kill my family like this? How can I do this? And just so much compassion for them and their souls. And Arjuna even goes to places of like, how do I even know who's supposed to win this war? Why should I even fight? How am I supposed to even know? What side's the best side to come out victorious? And he's just becoming more and more consumed by grief and pain and sorrow. And in like the verse prior to this, Arjuna says that the grief which is drying up his senses. And Prabhupada continues to elaborate on it, says drying up his whole existence. That like it's like Arjuna's experiencing like the highest degree of pain a human being can experience in this moment. He's just overwhelmed, totally consumed. I mean, he is a great warrior, very high being, and this pain is just destroying him. And so he says to Krishna, he says, Govinda. He says, so I'll read the translation again. Sanjaya said, and Sanjaya, by the way, is narrating. He's like reporting to Dhritarashtra what's happening on the battlefield. And Sanjaya is also like, he's a very clear seer. He's seeing the battlefield very clearly. He says, Sanjaya said, having spoken thus, Arjuna, chastiser of enemies, told Krishna, Govinda, I shall not fight, and fell silent. And I love this moment with Arjuna. It's such an emotional moment. Arjuna's, first of all, filled with emotion, and then he just hits this moment. He's like, he's telling Krishna, he's telling like God. He's like, I'm not gonna do it. I'm not gonna do this. And he's shut down. He's shut down by emotion. And I love this moment because for me and many others I know, this is such a human experience of feeling so overwhelmed. The nervous system's just like on fire. And it's like, how can I do anything? How can I even get out of bed? It's like what comes up for me a lot. How can I even get out of bed today? I'm just overconsumed by grief and lamentation and 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 then ultimately though, what's so meaningful to me about this text is that in the purport that Trishtastra is like, this is great news. I'm so glad. He's like, oh good, he's just gonna leave. And he's like the only thing that can bring me down right now, Arjuna, this great warrior. He's like, he's gonna leave. I'm chilling. This is great. And then Arjuna is like, no, no, because he can see clearly. Sanjaya can see so clearly, and so he says it disappointed him again in relating that Arjuna was competent to kill his enemies. Although Arjuna was for the time being overwhelmed with false grief due to family affection, he surrendered unto Krishna, the supreme spiritual master, as a disciple. And this is where Arjuna is so inspiring, is that even in this utterly devastating experience, his highest ideal is surrendering to Krishna, being a disciple of Krishna. And so it's like, yeah, no matter what he's going through. And I think for Arjuna, it's like he's already he's expressing this to Krishna. He's expressing this pain, this emotion, this declaration. I'm not doing this, Krishna. But really, like before all that, like he came to Krishna and he said, now I'm confused about my duty and have lost all composure because of weakness. In this condition, I am asking you to tell me clearly what is best for me. Now I am your disciple and a soul surrendered unto you. Please instruct me. Arjuna, like, he knows that he's not getting something. He knows that he's lost. He knows that he's confused. He knows that he's disconnected. And so even though he's having all of this pain, he doesn't want to fight. He's like, I'm not doing this. Simultaneously, he's like going to Krishna, like, I know you can guide me. I know you can guide me through this. Even though I'm utterly overwhelmed, I'm completely in pain. I know you can take me through this. And so much of chapter 2 is that's it. That's material life. Material life is completely and utterly disturbing. It's overwhelming. And like Prabhupada says in his purport, this is like Arjuna's false grief. That so much of this emotion that is so intensified and can shut us down from duty, it's not real. It's false. It's false lamentation. It's grief for the wrong reasons. And that when there's the opportunity to surrender fully to Krishna, it's like all of that false emotion, all that false grief falls away, and there's nothing left besides duty. There's nothing left besides service to Krishna. So I'm personally been really moved by this, like moved that there's that Arjuna, even like the most pious soul, like such a high soul, even he can be totally shut down, totally overwhelmed. And that's like, again, it's just like the reminder that that's just the nature of material life. It's overwhelming. It's overwhelming. And like it's not about trying to find a way out of lamentation. It's about just surrendering to Krishna, about being a disciple of Krishna and giving ourselves to that practice and process. And this text talks a lot about it's like about like this chapter especially, which is kind of the essence of the Gita in whole. It talks a lot about that distress and happiness are ebb and flow, and that like we have to be tolerant to not be disturbed by the appearance and disappearance of happiness and distress. And I've been connected with like, and happiness is like it's just the relief temporary relief of distress. Really, material life, it's all distress. It's all distress. And then there's like temporary relief, and we call that happiness. But really, like, there's no happiness until the transcendental bliss of surrendering as a devotee to Krishna. That's the wellspring of real happiness. Everything else is distress and temporary relief from it. But even that ebbs and flows. So it's like to not be disturbed. But like sometimes I'm in mild distress, and it's like, oh, that's a good day. Okay, yeah, woo, woo. I start celebrating. I go, oh my God, this is great. And then I'm really down. And I'm like, I can't do anything. I'm not gonna fight. And this chapter is so much about like, don't be disturbed by that. And all of that arises from sense perception. All of that arises from sense perception in the material world. And so it's like part of surrendering to Krishna, being open, available to fulfill our duty to Krishna, is letting go of so much of that attachment to sense perception and not being so swayed. Like this text says, like, yeah, the highest soul is just not bothered. It's like it all exists, it all happens. It's just not moved in one way or another by any senses. That the horses on the chariot are not running the show. Yeah, they're so wild and chaotic. And sometimes when they're so wild, so chaotic, it's just like you just stand. That's when you're like, I can't do anything. You drop the reins. You're like, I can't do this. Freaking out. And yeah, so Arjuna, I love this Sanjaya. Just coming back to Sanjaya sees Arjuna's already surrendered. He's already surrendered. Fully a disciple of Krishna. He's gonna fight. And then it takes like the entire Bhagavad Gita for him to like fully get there. But even from this moment where he says, I shall not fight, it's like, and then he falls silent. And what happens when we fall silent? We listen, we start to listen. So like Arjuna is so absorbed in his own experience, and I'm not gonna fight. And then he falls silent because now he's ready. He's ready to receive Krishna and Krishna's wisdom. And then that's what happens for the next like the rest of the time that Krishna's, this whole conversation of Bhagavad Gita is happening. So he's fully surrendered. He's listening, absorbing in what Krishna has to share. And so that way he can fight. So that way he can fulfill his duty. Because ultimately that's who Arjuna is. He's a man of duty. He's gonna show up fully. And so I think that happens for me and so many of us, is that we know ultimately, like, yeah, we're gonna show up, we're gonna give our all. And sometimes there's these moments, these very human moments of just feeling so overwhelmed by pain and grief and sadness. And I know I have a propensity to try to figure that out. Like, why is it there? Why is it there? And then that continues, like the bewilderment, the confusion of distress. And there's just no purpose. There's no real purpose to do, like, point to doing that. There's no real point. And because even in this text, like he's disturbed by, I have to kill my family and my teachers. This is what is this? And Krishna's like, you're not seeing the point. Like, you sound like a really scholarly dude. Like, I get it. Like, you have morals, cool. But he's like, you're not seeing the point. Like, the point is duty. The point is duty. The point is devotional service to me. And so it's like any of those moments where we're confused. And I don't get it. And why do I have to do this? And why is life like this? And this is scary. And this is weird and hard. And it's like, that's not the point. None of that's the point. I'm experiencing so much pain. It's really hurting. That's not the point. It's just not the point. Whatever is happening, like, experience your experience, but what we're experiencing, it's not the point. It's not the purpose. The purpose is to turn towards Krishna and loving devotion. That's the point. Not to figure out what's happening in my experience, but to take my experience and let it move me to turning towards Krishna. That's the point. That's it. That's all there is. So Arjuna's like, he gets that in Bhagavad Gita, and he gets that like right here in this moment when he falls silent. He falls silent because he understands deep down that, like, the point is to be here listening to Krishna, being with his deep friend. That's now he's being fully like disciple guru relationship. You are 100% my spiritual master in this moment. I'm I'm gonna listen to your instructions and I'm gonna follow thoroughly. I'm gonna bring my experience to you. I'm gonna be honest with myself. I'm gonna meet myself where I'm at. And ultimately, I'm gonna follow your instruction because I trust you fully. Arjuna trusts Krishna fully. So yeah, and this I brought this verse today because it touches me so deeply, because I have been lost in my life so much in false lamentation, um, and have been caught in the space where it feels like it's just a sea of endless entrapment of suffering. And I love that there's such a simple. It's so confusing, right? It's so confusing, bewildering. How do I ever get out of this? And the answer is really simple. It's like chant Hare Krishna. Chant Hare Krishna. Read Prabhupada's text. That's like kind of where this chapter goes to is that being engaged in these different activities that are connected and aligned with Krishna, that we are like we said, the mantra, it's non-different. It's non-different from Krishna. Because like to the degree that we're engaged in connecting with these activities, that's the only thing that can keep us from being consumed by sense perception, swayed constantly by the senses. It's like that. It's so difficult here to fully surrender to Krishna because we're honestly just constantly bombarded, attracted, distracted. So it's like, yeah, that's like the only thing to do is chant Hare Krishna and read Prabhupada's text and do our best to be a servant of Krishna in every moment. And to the degree that I'm not doing that, I'm going to be in false lamentation. I'm going to be in false grief. I'm going to be experiencing the false pain of watching people die. And that's so much of the text too, is that this chapter and where this goes is that the death just doesn't matter. The body's not real. The body's not real. Like Arjuna is so afraid of killing his loved ones, truly people he cares about, and he has so much compassion for. He's scared about killing him. And Krishna's like, you can't kill him. You can't. He's like, you can take their material dress away, sure. But he said, really, Arjuna, this is like an opportunity. Like you're an incredibly pious soul, real true devotee of Krishna. Like being slain by your arrows, that's opportunity for liberation, for ascension, for spiritual realization. Let alone the fact that all of these deaths are going to happen on a battlefield that is completely, it's like Krishna, the Supreme Personality, in form on this battlefield, like just an utterly holy moment in the material world. Just what an utterly holy moment, and the death is such a special opportunity to raise consciousness towards Krishna consciousness. So it's like Krishna's right there where all these souls are leaving their bodies and then like immediately like being so present and absorbed. It talks about a lot, like we want to be as absorbed as we can in the names of God at the time of death. Like what better way to be absorbed in God at the time of death than dying on the battlefield that God's at? Like that is, it's just extraordinary. And so Krishna's like, Arjuna, you're so silly. This is like, you aren't getting the point that the material body, the dress, it's not important. The pastime, sure, whatever, but it's like this is an opportunity. It even says like they're going to get an opportunity to be young again. Like these are old dudes. Like this is an opportunity for them to have youth and young. So whether it's like the body's not real or any other false material lamentation we land in, when I'm personally in grief and lamenting, I'm just missing the point. I'm not understanding how material what I'm grieving over is. My compassion is misplaced. Yeah. And it's not easy for Arjuna. Like he goes through this entire conversation. It's really intense for him. He's hanging on to every word Krishna says, and he's going through his own inner battle throughout the entire process. It's not like Krishna says a few words and he's like, oh, I'm ready to fight. It's like this takes a while. This takes a serious amount of time. And a really deep intensity of presence and devotion and surrender from Arjuna to actually get to a place where he's willing to fight this battle. And this battle is it's real and analogous, synonymous with the battle that we're all in every day with Maya, with Durga, with material life. It's like we're all Arjuna, totally overwhelmed, endeavoring to fight. And the greater degree that we can listen to Krishna, do practices that bring us out of sense perception and into the heart, into loving devotion of God. It's like, to the degree that we can do that, then we can fight. We can fight the way Arjuna fights. Yeah, I'm feeling complete with that sharing. So I'll open it to discussion, questions, comments, and Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. You can see who's online. So
Yeah.
sense of all the source. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, James, for what you shared so far. It's very inspiring, and your personal relation to the verse, this part of Bhagavad Gita, and Arjuna, and something that you highlighted for me was the fact that Arjuna is like fully experiencing experience, and he's honest with where he's at. Like, I'm not gonna fight. But at the same time, he doesn't like actually leave. Like he's not giving up. He's basically saying, I'm not gonna fight, like I'm giving up. But he's actually not giving, like he's not following through. Like he doesn't actually leave. He surrenders to Krishna. So it's like, so that's because sometimes I can think it's like either or, like if I'm really honest with myself, that means that I'm gonna like leave Krishna, consciousness or whatever. If I'm really honest with myself, but I could be honest and say, oh, like I'm not doing this anymore, and still surrender to Krishna for instruction. So I appreciate that. Appreciate that point.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that. I'm reminded of David shares in seminars sometimes, like all emotions are welcome.
Yeah.
So does that mean that like all actions are welcome? Well, somebody can be in an emotion, it's like, I just want to murder him, like having deeply murderous thoughts. Well, he's not going to murder, like, but it's not okay to actually go murder him. But it's okay to like express that real emotion.
Yeah.
So even here, Arjuna, it's like it's not okay for him to not fight. And Krishna makes that clear. He goes, that's not okay, actually. For you to not show up in your duty right now, that's pathetic. Krishna makes that clear to Arjuna. He's like, you kind of understand too. You're like a little too far along to be not doing your duty here. Yeah. And Arjuna knows that. He's like, he knows that it's not okay to not fight. But it is okay for him to fully express the emotional experience he's having, which is true for him, that he's like, I'm not going to do this, Govinda. Yeah. And then, so yeah, I love that. Thanks for that point. Yeah. He's so present to his real emotion and honest with himself that action's not okay. Action following that emotion is not okay in this moment. That's why he's surrendered to Krishna. That's why he's listening.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'll share one more thing. I'll share about just it comes, this because like the false family affection and like that can be jarring, for me even, for new people, perhaps newer people, to hear this sort of philosophy, like that some paths or religions really emphasize family affection and things like that.
True.
And so I was just thinking about that, and with Arjuna, because you're speaking about Arjuna, and because time, place, and circumstance, who's the message for? So the message is for us. But he's preaching to Arjuna, and Arjuna has such a high level of family, like honor and respect, like way more than what we have in today's culture. So we're kind of like broken. Our society is like broken when it comes to family bonds and social structure. Families are the backbone of society. So our society is sort of broken in that way. So for us, it's like, having a strong family bond and affection is an advancement
Mhm.
in our society.
Mm.
But for Arjuna in that time, the Varnashram system, the system of social structure of the different orders of life and the and structure of society and family was so strong that, like, Arjuna respected his elders to like an inconceivable degree compared to how we respect our elders.
Yeah.
Or like the affection that and relationship that he has with his brothers would be like far beyond anything that we could conceive of as like relationship with our siblings or brothers and things like that.
Mm.
So for him, he has that. It reminds me of like the you know this path to sainthood runs through adulthood.
Yeah.
Like so Scott Peck and I think Scott Peck, he goes on in that and says like first, for his perspective, I think it's the line that resonates for me.
Yeah.
First, we need to have an identity before we transcend that identity.
Mm.
So it's like we're kind of don't even have an identity, in this Kali Yuga and Western society. Like we don't, our social structure is so broken. So it is for us. It is an advancement. That's why
Yes.
Varnashram, what Prabhupada wanted to establish, the second half of his mission that he wanted to establish was more the Varnashram, the social structure, because that is an advancement for us to have strong family bonds and strong affection. But for Arjuna, he has like that solid, So for him, it's like it's time to transcend that, It's time to transcend that, family affections. But for us, for and although another thing I want to say is that in Prabhupada's because okay, well, why is Prabhupada not emphasizing family so much? I would say that the I'm kind of bringing up concerns that people might have, or
Yeah.
why is Prabhupada, and that maybe I could have to, but the core instruction that Prabhupada gives for his followers, the four regulative principles and chanting 16 grounds, I would argue that that's completely family, like supportive of family life and family bonds. Because I imagine if I grew up in a household where the four regulative principles were, was followed and 16 grounds would be chanted, what a family life, that would be. So, so yeah, because this regulated sex life means there's not unwanted progeny. That's part of Bhagavad Gita too. Like, there's not broken families and things like that. And then of course the intoxication. So much harmful things happen in families. Child abuse and so many things come from intoxication and drug use. And then gambling, risky behavior that can destroy families too. I can say mostly men perhaps, but engaging in risky behavior with anyone. And then and meat eating. I mean, that's compassion and violence can happen and that. So those are something that was coming up for me when talking about this part of Bhagavad Gita.
Yeah, thanks for sharing, Barbara. A lot in your sharing there. Yeah, thanks. Yeah, yeah, moved by like you started that sharing by saying like this can be sensitive, for difficult to hear about like the potential downfalls of family affection.
Right.
And yeah, in our society, like Arjuna, yeah, he was very strong in family affection in a very real way, and still he was like he was falsely lamenting about it. And for us, like my experience in family life is that it's family is an opportunity for duty, to learn to take care of others. Like there's so much opportunity to learn how to serve Krishna through serving family. It's like an environment of practice. There's plenty of opportunity for bhakti. And then what I also noticed for myself is that I have so much attachment to family and into that affection. And then it moves to like places of neediness. And I go to like taking shelter in family instead of taking shelter in Krishna. And then it also, like, that affection and attachment, it brings up all this like fear and potential sorrow. I find myself sometimes like daydreaming terribly, like what if my wife Jema, what if she died tomorrow? Like, could I even handle it? You know, so it's like my deep attachments to my family and family affection is creating such a disturbing environment inside that's keeping me from fully embracing love of Krishna and fully embracing the practices of bhakti, because there's just so much disturbance happening. And then my mind's not on Krishna anymore. My mind's on how can I get love from my wife, or what would I ever do if my these cats I have died? Like what would I ever? And then I'm just like swallowing. I'm just like swimming in this terrible space, and it's just I'm not connected. I'm not connected to Krishna. I'm not connected to thinking of Krishna and serving Prabhupada's mission. I'm disconnected from that. And so like, the text even talking, it's like it is jarring. Like I read the other day, like text talking about like Lord Chaitanya, like just taking the life of a sannyasi. Yeah, at like 24 years old. And like he's a little younger than me. He leaves young wife and mom who have nobody to take care of him. And it's like, wow, that's painful. And the text is saying like that's an extraordinary ideal. And it's like, whoa, that's hard. Yeah, that's hard to hear a little bit, especially like being so immersed and enmeshed in family. But when I look at it honestly, I see how much that when I look honestly, I see how much my family has served me in my growth towards bhakti, and how much if I'm not careful, can be totally taken away from bhakti because of my false affections and in like gross engagement in that activity. So yeah, and I think you're right. Like culturally, I appreciate you noted like culturally. I experience culturally is like people really don't get how to do family right now, like on a large scale. And it's messy a lot of the time, and like you said, addiction and broken homes, and it's just creating a lot of trauma. It's making it harder and harder for souls to realize Krishna. And I also feel so moved in my life to try to be a model family of what it looks like, a family that inspires Krishna consciousness. So yeah, thanks for that. Yeah, I'm moved.
Hare Krishna.
Garuda has his hand raised. Hi, Garuda.
Hare Krishna. Thank you, James, for your class today. Yeah, I'm really, what kind of stood out mostly for me was this, what you were speaking to in regards to all the overwhelmed emotions and limitation and really being stuck in the material like perspective or the material consciousness, where Krishna is imparting to Arjuna like this transcendental knowledge about as it goes further into the dialogue between Arjuna and Krishna, really looking at like in the end, Arjuna feels he's been imparted this transcendental knowledge. And so he sees the situation he's in a different way. Like he has this new perspective he's been given. And then I was like thinking about like, I don't know how much of your life, how long you've been, bewildered or in lamentation or anything like that. But what I was kind of hearing from you was that has been a part of your journey in this life. And recently coming into contact with Krishna consciousness has helped you step out of your material consciousness, your material perspective. And it's really been such a like support to see life in existence and your relationship with your creator, Krishna. If you're identifying with Krishna as your God, whatever you identify it with, but really like having that new transcendental knowledge, and then focusing more of your consciousness, your energy on that relationship is also supporting you out of that material mess that you are in. So I don't know if I'm really just kind of highlighting what stood out for me. Maybe I'm doing that, And maybe I'm asking a little bit more of like, could you share the difference now? Because I think you might have mentioned to me about 11 months or something you've been experimenting with this process and really giving yourself more fully to it. So I would like to hear a little bit more about like, yeah, what is your direct experience now as opposed to what the way it was? Thank you, Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Yeah, yeah, thanks for that, Guru. Yeah, you know, what's the distinction between my experience, kind of like, because I've been touchstoning to bhakti practices and culture and chanting here and there for 7 years, and I noticed there was about 10 months ago I committed more seriously to chanting japa and reading Prabhupada's books. And I had noticed maybe like in the 3 years prior to that, I had noticed that there maybe wasn't a day that went by where I didn't say at least like one mantra in my head. It was just like it was with me. It was just with me all the time. And then I had actually traveled to India. I went to Vrindavan for a friend's wedding. And while I was there, I met a man. He was a rickshaw driver. Rickshaw?
Rickshaw.
Yeah, he was a rickshaw driver. He was very sweet. He just took me and my wife, kind of all around Delhi, and was just very, very sweet and kind to us, and it was a devotee, and me and him started messaging, and every day he just messaged me Hare Krishna, and I messaged back Hare Krishna, so it's like next thing I knew, it's like every day I'm like, now I'm in correspondence messaging Hare Krishna. He's sending me beautiful pictures of Krishna, and I'm like, wow, Krishna's really in my life. So anyways, that's not really answering the question, just a little bit of my backstory, but the distinction for me. The distinction for me is that before practicing these practices more seriously, my lamentation, my false emotional grief, it would be there, and then it would get like alleviated by false happiness. It's like I would kind of move through the process, and then I'd end up back in happiness and be like, thank God I'm back in happiness. And I experienced myself as like really bipolar. Like I would really swing very heavily between deep depression, darkness, and joy, bliss, happiness. And doing these practices, it's like, yeah, I'm still experiencing a really extreme amount of darkness and pain. And what's happening is like, I don't feel so swingy in myself. I don't feel like the sense, even the horses, like the horses of the senses, like they're not running as far wide as they used to. So something's starting to like narrow in and tunnel in, cone in for me, and like there's definitely a container that keeps becoming more and more enveloping for me. And I can't like go as far outside of that container, and yet I'm still exploring it, because it's like I'm still experiencing like great depths of pain and emotion, but I'm experiencing them differently. It's like I'm connected to it as a way of like, oh God, I gotta go deeper in this practice. And before it was like the pain really drove me away from anything. Like, and now it's like, even when I feel that apathy, shut down experience, like Arjuna, like I'm not gonna fight. I'm not gonna do life anymore. Ultimately, I'm feeling more and more driven, even if it doesn't seem that way on the surface for myself sometimes. I'm feeling more and more driven towards God and towards spiritual practice. So I wonder if that answered your question.
Yeah. I mean, I really appreciate that little tidbit of your experience in India. That's really special, to just bring the Maha Mantra daily, through that experience, and Krishna, images of Krishna. Yeah, and then I was hearing, with your share that, it wasn't like when you were in disturbances, maybe even happiness, but specifically the disturbances weren't as consuming for you or overwhelming for you, or where it like pushed you into like complacency or like stagnant or getting stuck. now you're seeing that relationship differently as like, oh, this is communication, and let me use this to make more commitments and refocus on getting closer to Krishna. So there's a different relationship now, kind of, is what I'm hearing with those same emotions or the same disturbances.
Yeah, there's a different relationship. There's a different relationship, and I'm still exploring that relationship because it's like foreign and new to me still on how I'm approaching that inner experience differently. But definitely, and I for sure, like I noticed right away, first months and weeks of me just chanting, Maha Mantra Japa daily. It was just like everything was quieting down, and there was a soberness that was very quickly came for me, like a soberness that I didn't have before, and that's continuing to grow in deeper ways. So, yeah, thanks for that. Thanks for sharing.
Yeah, thank you for sharing. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Oh.
You go, Vinda.
Thank you, Dr. James Prabhu. Enlivened by your class and the realizations. I'm moved to your realizations of chapter 2, the texts and purports, that was just permeating throughout your class, Bhagavad Gita chapter 2. Again, you've studied that deeply, and never before have I entered into this verse so threadbare. Prabhupada uses the term threadbare. Like get to the threads. And so never before have I entered into it in so many aspects, hearing you. So thanks for that. And yeah, like I appreciated how you opened the door, and I never like gave attention to it too. Okay, in this verse, Arjuna's silent. It's like, okay, silent. I would just pass by that, over my 45 years of studying Bhagavad Gita. So because like he's taking an oppositional stand. At the same time, like this, I'm just repeating what you shared, and then in that silence, I'm open to hear. And I like, because it's apparently oppositional. At the same time, 2 verses previously, Prapanya Dosha, Bhakta Svabhava, that Arjuna says, okay, Arjuna acknowledged now, I'm bewildered, I'm a conditioned soul, I'm lost, I'm confused, I'm feeling weak, and now please instruct me. Okay, and he's saying, and here's where I'm at the beginning of our teacher-disciple relationship. Here's where I'm at. I shall not fight, and I'm open in the silences. I'm ready to hear. So I just never gave attention to that. So I thank you for that. That this verse and Arjuna's apparent defiance, which it is in a sense, it comes after he has sincerely surrendered, and that kind of continues as Bhagavad Gita goes on. I'm sorry, Krishna gives these sublime teachings, the profound philosophical thesis of Bhagavad Gita. And then at certain times, and Arjuna he's not defiant, but he says, well, you say this here and this here. Seems like a contradiction. He doesn't become cynical and like, I'm just out of here. But he's not pretending to understand something that's not true for him. And I'm appreciating and personally moved in my process by hearing your personal realizations as they apply and integrate with the philosophy here. Also, and just from the way you read the verse and spoke on the verse, I'm just giving more attention than ever before to the name. We've got 2 names of Krishna and 2 names of Arjuna, and just the meaning and why they're here and why Sanjaya is bringing them here, and the meaning. And so yes, so I'm very, very enriched by your class. Thank you, and thank you for being that. We don't want to we want to follow the principle of Arjuna, but not to imitate, because this for for most of the human population to focus on sattvic family values would be a few steps up. And then in your personal sharing, James, that you've appreciated that the family values and devoting yourself with duty and responsibility to family, it's been so grounding and helpful for you. And at the same time, that our attachment to that at some point that becomes a stumbling block, a roadblock. So thank you. I saw there was some chat while I was speaking. I don't want to chat.
So like this is part of Bhagavad Gita that maybe it's fast forwarded over
Yeah.
a little bit. And you're like this, like your very unique take on this particular verse, James.
Yeah, I appreciate you chose this verse.
Yeah. Thanks for sharing that. I'm happy you were moved by that verse. Like, I like the thread bearing analogy. Yeah, I read that verse. This is like the few verses around this I was really attracted to, and actually for like the past few days was. I didn't know which one I was going to pick, and I just kept landing on this. This seems like a little bit obscure, maybe not so common that the thread bearing happens, and I felt really called to like super pinnacle of what I'm experiencing in my life at this moment. So I'm glad that it was moving for you. Hare Krishna. Let's see. Chat. Oh, technology.
You mean to do it?
Yeah. The mouse seems kind of unusual for some reason.
Okay.
It's not working for me.
Okay. Hare Krishna. So I heard Anasuya. I see Anasuya Road. Okay. Hare Krishna, I'm experiencing internet instability and I want to express my gratitude for Bhakta James' presentation this morning. So moving and grounding for me. And in our Bhagavad Gita course, we are studying chapter 2. That's right. And we have our module on Saturday and we're immersed in this, the first part of chapter 2. Very nice. I would love your presence in the BG. Anasuna is encouraging you to join the Bhagavad Gita course. And Rachel's giving the thumbs up and smiles for James here. And Rachel wrote, I'm appreciating the value you're receiving through your connection to Krishna and immersion in the practice of bhakti is evidenced by the drive to live and move forward in your life. You're experiencing your experience with less inflammation than you had been experiencing prior to your practice. Hare Krishna, hallelujah. Hallelujah.
Hare Krishna.
Yes.
I love that word of inflammation.
Yeah.
Less inflammation. That's a good term for it. So thank you for that. Thank you, Anya Sujit. PPGTC. Yeah, that class seems so inspiring. I'm currently engaged in PPTC Part 2, and I like being in one thing at a time. But yeah, that I'm inspired by that class. And Rose had mentioned that it was chapter 2, and so I don't know. I just felt really called. I think also it's my first bhakti discussion leading like this. I just thought what better place to go than chapter 2 of Bhagavad Gita. I just felt it's so fun, and I was connecting a lot with that during this time. It's a very foundationary chapter. It's literally titled "The Contents of the Gita Summarized," and the Gita is the foundation of all of the bhakti philosophy. So it's like, wow, this is the root. So. Yeah, any other questions, comments, sharing? Hare Krishna.
Bhagavad Gita ki.
Jai.
Srila Prabhupada ki.
Jai.
Thank you, Dr. James Prabhu.
Thank you all. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, thank you.
Congratulations on your first class.